What up, everybody? Raising Kanan Season 4, Episode 6. We got an update concerning the Raising Kanan timeline, as Famous's obituary card said he died in October 1992. And since he had been missing for 3 months, the current timeline should be around January 1993. The Raising Kanan timeline started in January 1991 at the beginning of Season 1, making it 2 years through 3.5 seasons so far. And with Kanan's birthday being August 15th, 1975, Kanan would still only be 17 years old. And even though we don't have an official date of birth for Ghost and Tommy, they're likely around 12 or 13 years old on the current timeline. Because in OG Power, the credit scene from 1996 is when Angela was about to leave the South Side for Choate. And Angela left for Choate when her and Ghost were around 16 years old. So at the current pace of Raising Kanan, there could be a legit about 5 more seasons still before we get to 1996 on the timeline. And by that time, Kanan had connected with both Breeze and Ghost and Tommy. But Ghost and Tommy hadn't met Breeze yet, because Tommy was telling Ghost in the credit scene that Kanan was going to introduce them to Breeze on that specific night. So either though there's been a lot of speculation that the 5th season of Raising Kanan that has already been filmed will be the final season, it looks like it's more likely that Raising Kanan will go 6 seasons like OG Power, then have about a year time jump before the beginning of Origins, which will be around 1995. And we know that Ghost and Tommy were very close to Kanan, and they also knew Jukebox. But the big question is, did Ghost and Tommy ever meet any other members of the Thomas family, and specifically Kanan's mother, Rock? Will we ever get a chance to see Ghost, Tommy, and Rock all on the screen together at the same time? Up until Season 3, Rock kept close tabs on who Kanan was friends with, and knew all his friends by name. But in Season 3, that control started slipping away from her when Kanan started hustling, and Howard told her that Kanan had some new friends, talking about his couriers. And Rock lost even more control after that when Kanan connected with Ronnie, Snaps, and Pop. But even concerning Kanan's childhood friends, Rock even had a toxic relationship with them, considering she made the call to put down D-Wiz, and we don't know if she was involved in Famous's death or not. But she was still putting Famous in a bad spot when him and Kanan were roommates, putting the gun in Kanan's backpack in front of him, intimidating him, and bribing him, forcing him to make the choice whether to tell Kanan about what she did or not. And even though Scrappy was a few years older than Kanan, they also became friends, and Rock killed Scrappy herself because she got bad intel from Howard that Scrappy was a snitch. And even though she never admitted that to Kanan, he pretty much figured out the truth. So because of that, Kanan has good reason to keep any potential friends he may have away from his mother. In Season 2 of Power, Kanan did mention his mother to Ghost and Tommy, telling them that he just got out of prison, went to see his mom, then went to see Ghost at his penthouse. But this conversation didn't give any indication whether or not Ghost and Tommy ever actually met Rock or not. But the truth is, we know that Kanan was actually out of prison for a minute before going to see Ghost. So the fact that Kanan used his mother's name for a lie could potentially be a clue that Ghost and Tommy didn't know Rock. In addition to that, neither Ghost or Tommy responded after Kanan told them that he went to see his mother, then went straight there. They didn't ask him any type of question like how she had been or how she was doing or anything like that. Then there's also the fact we don't even know if Rock was dead or alive by this point in time, because the news report Tariq was watching after Kanan died said he had no known living next to kin. So Kanan could have even potentially been talking about visiting Rock's gravesite, as we've seen multiple characters visiting the gravesite of loved ones throughout Power. Ghost also told Sean at one point him and Kanan were very close, and that Kanan was there for him when his pops died. Kanan might have been able to help Ghost deal with his father's death because he had already dealt with the death of his mother. But with that said, I'd like to believe that Rock is still alive on the Power timeline. And because of who she is, we would think that Ghost and Tommy at minimum had at least heard of Rock and knew what she was about. But what we also know is that by 1996, Rock was no longer running the Southside drug operation. But that doesn't necessarily mean she got out the game, considering right now, Rock's trying to level up and become the Connect. So just like Kanan gave the Southside to Ghost and Tommy, and they gave it to the RSKs, Rock might have actually gave the Southside operation to Breeze when she becomes the Connect. If OG Power serves as any kind of reference, whether or not Rock will meet Ghost and Tommy, then it's also leading in the direction that she won't. Because if that Ghost never met any of Tariq's friends like Brayden or Effie, or even the Tejada family. Either though we don't know if Ghost ever met Lorenzo or Monet before. And with Ghost and Tommy being so young, it's really not any kind of reason for them to meet Rock at this point. If Rock does ever meet Ghost and Tommy, I think it could likely be a situation where she shows up at Kanan's apartment and they're there and that's how they could meet. But with that said, there's also the clue from the strip mall that Rock bought in Season 3 that had the name Tommy spray painted on the building. So it would be crazy if Ghost and Tommy got their introductions to the show by Rock actually catching them vandalizing her building. And there could be another clue from OG Power whether Ghost knew Rock. And that's the fact that from the time Kanan went to prison, Ghost was the one who was taking care of Sean and making sure him and Jarita were provided for financially. Ghost was also the one who was putting money on Kanan's books. So because the fact that Ghost was close with Kanan's son and baby mother could be a clue that he did also know Rock. Then there's also the fact that Sean called Ghost Uncle G, but he didn't call Tommy Uncle Tommy. We also know that Tommy's mother Kate was a stripper back in these days, and Tommy's first job was a bouncer at one of the clubs that Kate worked at. And we know that Ghost's father owned a nightclub in Manhattan that he lost at some point before purchasing a bar in Southside Jamaica, Queens, that Ghost later bought in Season 6 of Power with intention of turning it into the QCP. So depending on who Ghost's father is, there's the question whether Rock knew Ghost's father considering they're all from the Southside, and does Kate ever meet Rock or anybody from the Thomas family? But Kanan will also play just as key of a role in raising up Ghost and Tommy as their parents did, because it was said multiple times in Power that Kanan was who raised Ghost and Tommy. Tommy told Sean that back in the day, Kanan kept him and Ghost in line and made them men. Jukebox once told Kanan that Kanan raised up Ghost to be a gangster. She also said at one point Ghost was mean with a piece. So that lets us know that Ghost and Jukebox will eventually put in work together at some point to where she sees Ghost in action. And Ghost even said it himself when he was talking to Kanan during a hallucination right before he was shot by Tariq, that Kanan made him the way he was. And if he wasn't raised by Kanan, and if he was born somewhere else, he would have been in business school. So that's 3 references from Power that Kanan raised Ghost and Tommy. So will we see the one who raised Kanan, Rock, Kanan's mother, ever meet Ghost and Tommy? Let me know what you think, as well as your thoughts, theories, and predictions in the comments.